Hi and welcome to the 5.03 quiz for U.S. History Part B. In this quiz, you will be taking a quiz with a total of 15 questions worth 1 point each. In this video, I will be reading the questions and the answer options to you to help you with your quiz. As you go through the quiz, make sure to save your answers as you go along, and then when you're done, click on Submit for Grading. You find your quiz located here in the course by clicking on the Unit 5 tab, extending Unit 5 to see all the items underneath it, and clicking on 503 Quiz underneath the 503 Reflections on War lesson. Let's get started with the quiz. Number 1, what led to the construction of the Berlin Wall? The Soviets wanted to show their military might. People were leaving West Berlin for the Eastern Zone. The British and Americans wanted to clearly define the Western Zone. Or the number of people fleeing East Germany was causing an economic crisis. Number 2, you have a map activity in which you need to identify Cuba. So is Cuba number 1? Number 2 here on the map, number 3, or number 4. Indicate the number you think it is by filling in the option on the quiz. Number 3, which was not a reason for tensions between the United States and Cuba in the 1950s. Cuban poverty caused by an American-backed dictator, a revolution that brought a communist to power, nationalization of American businesses, or buildup of the Cuban army. Number 4, what was the Bay of Pigs? A polluted area that affected U.S. naval operations, a secret plan for the invasion of Florida by Cuban nationalists, a secret plan for the invasion of Cuba by U.S. trained exiles, or an area that harbored Cuban communist sympathizers. Number 5, which was not an element of the Cuban Missile Crisis? Nuclear missile sites under construction in Cuba, U.S. naval blockade around Cuba, threatened boycott of U.S. businesses by Cuba, or the Soviet view that the United States was committing an act of aggression. Number 6, how was the Cuban Missile Crisis resolved? With skirmishes in the Caribbean that ended in a standoff, with negotiations that removed Soviet missiles from Cuba and U.S. missiles from Turkey, through meetings of the UN Security Council, or the last option, with negotiations that allowed Soviet missiles to remain in Cuba with UN inspectors monitoring them. Number 7, what was the main reason for the U.S. involvement in Vietnam? The belief that communism would spread throughout Southeast Asia, an interest in honoring a commitment to the members of the United Nations, the decision to honor a treaty agreement, or a response to a request for the support in the fight against communism. Number 8, which was not a justification for the increase in U.S. involvement in Vietnam. To avoid the domino effect of communism's spread in the region, to fight communism, to keep North Vietnam aligned with the United States, or to respond to attacks on U.S. troops in neutral territory. Number 9, which group correctly matches the people with the role they played during the Vietnam War? A. Ho Chi Minh was the communist leader of North Vietnam. Ngo Dinh Diem, a negotiator who refused to accept a Nobel Peace Prize. William Westmoreland, commander of U.S. forces in Vietnam, or Robert McNamara, President Johnson's Secretary of Defense. So are these correctly matched up together, or is it Group B, Le Duc Tho, negotiator who refused to accept the Nobel Peace Prize, Henry Kissinger, President Nixon's Secretary of State, Ngo Dinh Diem, corrupt leader of South Vietnam, and Ho Chi Minh, communist leader of North Vietnam. So which group, Group A or Group B, is correctly matched between the person being identified here in the bold and the description after the name? Group A or B? Number 10, which was not a problem for the U.S. military in fighting the Vietnam War. Guerrilla warfare was particularly difficult to combat. There was a shortage of soldiers. There was no defined front. The North Vietnamese developed effective supply techniques. Number 11, which was not a reason for the opposition to Vietnam War in the United States. The Vietnamese civilians were being killed by U.S. bombing raids. The draft unfairly targeted poor and working class men. The United States was interfering in what was essentially a civil war, or troops were not able to meet the demands of fighting a guerrilla war. Why was a lottery system put in place for the military draft? So drafted students could not object, to provide more candidates for the Army, to create a more fair system, or so that the incidence of medical disqualifications would be more spread out. Number 13, match each event with its intended description. So you have to match the number with the corresponding letter. The numbers are, or the events are, the Tet Offensive, Operation Menu, MENU, bombing of Hanoi and Haiphong, or the fall of Saigon. The descriptions are reunification of Vietnam under Ho Chi Minh, B, surprise New Year's Day attacks by the North Vietnamese, C, United States bombed Cambodia to destroy North Vietnamese supply lines, and D, U.S. effort to force resumption of Paris peace talks. Okay, so you're going to be matching up the number to the corresponding letter and then trying to identify which set of matches is accurate in the multiple choice here. Number 14, what was one of Richard Nixon's strategies for ending the Vietnam War? Limiting troops to position south of an imaginary line between the two countries, trading and supplying the South Vietnamese to take over full responsibility of the war, preventing bombing outside of Vietnam so that the war would not escalate to other countries, agreeing to pay reparations to North Vietnam for civilian deaths. Number 15, which was not a legacy of the Vietnam War. Vietnam became a single communist country. American citizens continued to distrust government actions in the United States. The United States lost world respect for aggression against a small nation. And the last option, patriotic pride increased for persevering in a difficult war. That is your last question for quiz 5.03. Please make sure again that you save your answers as you go and then you click submit for grading. As always, please make sure to contact me with any questions. Good luck on your quiz.